Welcome to the Spherity podcast season Product Passport Pioneers. My name is Susanne Guth-Orlowski and I'm Chief Innovation and Solutions Officer of Spherity. Today we're speaking to Adrian von Mühlenen, Product Owner Material Passport Catena-X, working for BASF. Welcome, Adrian. It's a great pleasure to have you at the show.
Hey, Susanne. Thanks for having me here, and it's a great pleasure.
In this season, we're talking to people who will have a personal impact on the success of the digital product passport, or how you call it, material passport. And this is why we invited you, Adrian, as you're driving the material passport in Catena-X. Before we go into the details of the material passport and Catena-X, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background? What did you do before joining Catena-X and working on the product passport?
With great pleasure. I always say in my first scientific language, je suis un produit de l'École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne. So I've been trained as an engineer at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in microengineering, and I found that a bit too boring. So I continued then as a material scientist and did my PhD in more or less experimental physics in printed electronics. At that time, in the early 2000s or late 2000 year, that was a kind of a hype topic, and everybody believed you can change the world using conjugated polymers or crystals. In my PhD, I used crystals, and then my first job, I went into more disordered system and I used polymers. And then everything gets cleared. My idol, Mr. Jan-Hendrik Schön, was suspicious. He did one measurement and published several Science and Nature papers, and that was one of the biggest scientific fraud, and the entire topic was gone. But that is like a gorgeous story, because you can see how things are getting hyped, and then it gets down the drain, but you can still learn something from that. And I appreciate Jan-Hendrik Schön as one of the biggest scientific storytellers. Today you would say he's a science slam guy, but that time he was a storyteller. Then somehow I get this interest in my customers, that was BASF, and they wanted to change their strategy, or they did even actually change their strategy in 2011 from the chemical company to we create chemistry. And to implement that, they wanted to become more innovative. And I was one of the founding members of the 4 technology incubators that were in one of these 4 research departments. And since then, I was always kind of working on radical innovation topic. And I was influenced also by Oliver Gassmann from Hochschule St. Gallen with his business model navigator. And you have the answer of cube, so technology, or no, market, technology, and then business model. You go to the top high behind corner where technology is new, market is new, business model is new. I say that's the suicide corner. And that's kind of the area where I like to move, or to do some developments.
That's probably a good description of the product passport from technology, business model, and so forth. Okay, so since when are you working in this role of the material passport at Catena-X?
I work since November 2021 in the role of the business. Now, I wouldn't say business owner. I'm the feature team lead in the jargon or the vocabulary of Catena-X. So I'm part of a use case, and that's circular economy, because that makes very much sense. That's the digital material or product passport is part of it, because it's a driver for circularity. And we are together with other interesting use cases or features like the dismantling dashboard, dismantling strategies, or the marketplace.
That's super interesting. Maybe you can give us an overview a little bit what Catena-X is, who are the members, and what are the goals of Catena-X?
Yeah, so first of all, the goal is just also expressed with the name. Catena means chain. And the target is to make this supply chain, value chain more robust in bringing in a more transparent communication feature. And the idea behind Catena is really that we start at the oil field or at the mine and start to describe in a digital twin what is the product about, and then just convey the message along the chain and enrich it. So that at the end of the day, if you have a finished car, you can really trace back where does the part come from and from which material has it been built. And when you then do record the use phase with this digital twin, so you will be enabled at the end of the use phase to have an information on which you can take decisions. And if we consider as one of the most expensive parts in a car, especially in the electrical vehicles, you will easily identify that as the high voltage storage. And then you can just see, wow, is that this high voltage storage still healthy? So is the, oh my gosh, what is this abbreviation? State of health, exactly. Yeah. Is the state of health okay? So does it charge rapidly enough and deliver current rapidly enough that we could use it again for a car, so we can reattribute it? If you see that the inertia in the storage has become a bit lower or bigger than the system reacts with a lower speed, then you could repurpose this as a local storage. And if you see that there is kind of damage at the battery, and then you must consider it will not operate anymore in a safe way, then you may consider to just crush it and grind it and make out of it black mass, and then get it back to a metal hydrological process, refine the metals out of it, and then use it as raw materials for the next battery. And also what we need to consider that not only this aspects about health and charge or damage is important, but also what are the boundary conditions. We see currently in the geopolitical situation that we have that nickel may become scarce. So that will also impact the marketplace, because if nickel goes up in price, then maybe you don't want to reattribute or reuse or repurpose an end of use high voltage storage and put it in your cellar to accumulate energy from your PV cells on the rooftop, but you just want to get it back as material, as premier or raw material to build the next series of batteries.
Yeah, but that sounds that the scope is broader than just being compliant to the product passport. It seems like there's the automotive industry coming together, solving various use cases that are based on data from the supply chain.
Absolutely. And that's also, I would say, represented in the names of the participants in the consortia. And what is important to understand that Catena-X is not only a public funded project where we develop technology, it's a kind of a threesome. So we have what I just said, the public funded project, that's the workbench. Then we have in the middle the association, where we have the governance structure and where we can collaborate with external parties like GBA, the Global Battery Alliance. And last but not least, we have then the operating companies. And there we are going then to take the result or developed in this workbench topic till up to a TRL 7, so in a pre-competitive stage and not to the completely functional solution. And then it is brought to the operating companies and brought to the market. And it's really a fantastic topic because on the one hand side, we have really that freedom to talk freely in between even competitors. And we have OEMs like Daimler, Volkswagen, BMW. We have software companies like SAP, Microsoft, also consider Siemens and Bosch as software companies. We have then cross industries like us or Henkel. We have IoT companies like DJM Mori or Trump. We have small and medium-sized companies like MePart, CCT, Tech4U, Upparts. We have transfer companies like Arena. We have guidance company like Gaia-X, Fraunhofer, DLR. So there is, I would say, almost of every part in the automotive supply and use chain is one representative. And so we cover more or less the entire network. And that's also the spirit. We want to really cover from A to Z the different stakeholders or personas, and then work with them on the use cases. And one of these use cases is sustainability together with circular economy. And that's where we have located the digital material path. And as we say, it's about materials. The battery is just like the very first good that we are focusing at, because as you know, the directive is 2006/66/EC is the most precise formulated guidance from the Commission on a digital product part, and is the part itself is also, I would say, in itself, I would say complicated but for the material perspective, it's limited and closed. So it's not an endless combination of various materials. So the modeling of what is therein is, I would say, straightforward. And so we have a concrete part that is the first use case, and we have a directive which is not yet finished and curved into stone, but it's quite precise. It's good enough for us. So we could start work with it.
The X of the Catena-X should relate to Gaia-X, shouldn't it? I mean, you mentioned Gaia-X.
Yeah.
If I go to your website or the Catena-X website, I can read that Catena-X is adopting the principles and technological basis of Gaia-X. Is that the, do I cite it in the correct way?
Yeah, so we have some principles that we took over from Gaia-X. And so what we say, you want to make sure that the solutions that we are going to develop always are interoperable. So that's important, so that we do not build the next silo. Because that's exactly what we need to break down. We need to stop that kind of mindset. I have to hide some information. No, we have to foster more this culture of sharing information, but in a way that we share only what the one who receives information really needs. So you don't share everything, because if you would share the bill of material of products, you would also unveil company or trade secrets. But there are, as you know yourself, with your technology from Spherity, there are ways to give just bits and parts of information, which the one who is asking for information really needs, and the rest you just can blind out. So for instance, the zero knowledge proof.
Yes, yes. Thank you for mentioning that. As product owner material passport, what's your goal in the next year, maybe 22 or 23? What are you trying to achieve during that time frame?
What we try to achieve is that we finish up the data model that we started to build. So we were looking at just the regulation I cited, the 2006/66/EC. We went to this 130 pages and identified the required data fields, and that were the ones that we started to model. Then we were looking with OEMs and material suppliers in the Catena network, whether they need some more information to run properly their business. Because what is important for us, not only to support the auditor or the governmental body that verifies that everything can be operated in a safe manner for the users of a AVV car, but also that the different stakeholders on now this non-linear value chain, but circular value chain, that they all get the information they need to do their job properly. And there are different aspects, and that's also fun, because the directive already gives some insights there, that there will be two different compartments. There will be a public compartment with information and a rather private compartment with information. And that makes completely sense, because we, as a refiner of material, we want to make sure that we get lots of black masses coming from the same battery technology. So the one who is doing that grinding of the battery modules and converts that into, first of all, waste and then black mass, that gentleman or that company, that lady, is making sure that there's only NCM technology of the same quality going in the grinder, not coming with blends of NCA and NCM. That would be a disaster for us. So the recycler needs to have more information to distinguish this kind of battery technologies, that we have similar lots of black mass, so that we can do our metallurgic hydrology in a proper way, and we do not spoil or damage our reactors.
Can you give us some concrete examples of the data that you collected? You mentioned you looked at the specification and then you came up with a vocabulary. What, for example, should be in this product passport? What did you identify?
So there are a couple of different things. So we have the social standards. Is there child labor involved for the mining of the metals? There are sustainable KPIs like the product carbon footprint, also the method according to which the product carbon footprint has been measured or calculated. And that will be an interesting one, because I know that we are developing a kind of a rule book how to assess the product carbon footprint. I know that there are other standards, and that will be then, I would say, interesting, because what we say as one of the Gaia-X principles, we need to be interoperable. But if you work with different rule books, then we need to someone decide either that's the standard or that we do kind of comparison tables so that we can map PCF values according to one standard to another standard, so that then this interoperability will be reality and not just like a buzzword.
I think that's an important one, and maybe something that the listener doesn't know, that exchanging values is one thing we need to do in an interoperable way and defining standards and semantics for it. But how difficult it is sometimes, to just agree on a single value, which is the calculation of this CO2 footprint, because there's simply different methods of calculating it. And there is no, at least as I know today, no institution that says this calculation is right or that calculation is right, correct?
But I guess there is going on with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. That one comes up with a given standard, but the interoperability is not only saying a normalization of the standards. I know that GBA does a normalization on the child labor standards, which is a good thing because there are several out there. But the other story is really about that you define what is the vocabulary to define the different bits and parts of high voltage storage, and that you link that vocabulary with the different entities of it, and you do like a relation between child and parent, and describe also what kind of value would you expect. And since we have to think in a system or a data model that has to run then worldwide, not in SI units, but also in kind of feet and gallon and pounds, we ensure that this kind of transfer from units is working. Another little thing is the decimal separator.
So I guess I'm asking, or we the last comment we had was that it's very difficult to find actually semantics that mean the same and that are directly comparable. And that's one of the work that you're doing at Catena-X, but you also mentioned, gladly, thank you for this, because I wanted to ask it as well, how are you working together with the Global Battery Alliance? And you said the Global Battery Alliance is actually already looking at finding standards, acceptable certifications for child labor, and you're concentrating a bit more on other things such as maybe the CO2 footprint and the semantics in other areas of the battery. Absolutely. Right?
Yeah. So the Global Battery Alliance, just to make that clear, is currently in the process to become a member of the association. And so there we have then this common ground to interact from or with results generated in the workbench, so in the publicly funded project. And then we can align with them, and so they can use our results and we can use their results, because it doesn't make sense that we redo another normalization of child labor standards and they would do another standard on greenhouse gas emission, what we already did.
Yes, yeah. No, I think it's important to always mention this in these podcasts, because people read about the product passport and, the Global Battery Alliance is doing something, the Catena-X group is doing something. And I found it important to mention that those people talk to each other and that they, influence each other and enrich each other and do not create competitive product passport technologies or so forth. I think it's just important to mention that to our listeners, and I'm glad it is like that, yeah, because we want all to become a success. Generally, on the product passport, what do you think about the concept of the digital product passport? What can it bring us other than maybe the compliance to the EU regulation? But what do you think generally of the concept of the product passport?
It is a gorgeous thing because it is, in my book, the foundational requirement to really get away from this linear supply chain to a circular supply chain. Because what you need at the end of the day, when you have a used product, is information about what is its ingredient. Because if you look at polymers, or if we name it a bit more the popular way, plastics, you want to know, is that a thermoplastic material? Is it a crystalline material? What kind of additives are there in? Is this cross-linked? Is there a kind of stabilizer in, Hals chemicals, anti-foam, softeners, kind of materials? And if some of these classes of materials are there in, you cannot do anymore this kind of physical recycling. So if you have a that you just heat it up again and you melt it and you reuse it, first of all, you need to get rid of some of the small molecules. And if it's cross-linked, then it's gone. And you can just grind it and make out of it heat or energy to support the next process, or chem cycling would be another way. But that is really, in my book, this data foundation that we are going to create, that we can really start about products, or not better to say, from used products, raw material for the next cycle. And we have learned now with the crisis in Ukraine, with the corona, with that big ship in the Suez Channel, that the global supply chain is not really the holy grail. So we have to start to understand, to take the material that we have locally and use the information that we accumulated over the life cycle to do better decisions at the end of the use phase, what to do with the material afterwards. For instance, one of the showcases I really like to cite is the Niaga product passport initiated by DSM for mattress. And if you just read Niaga, it's again, so this again product passport gives you insights about what kind of material is in your mattress. So you as a consumer are getting informed, is there any kind of toxic in it? You can really be sure because it's declared. And after the use phase, the product passport gives you insight, what can I do with my used mattress? I just do not need it to bring it to the next garbage collector, but you can bring it to a mattress collector who will then do the right things to make out of that foam again a raw material for either doing again a mattress or any kind of other foam, polymer foam for seatings or whatever. So in my book, that's really the target of the digital product passport. Inform the customer, make the supply and value chain more transparent, accumulate information so that at the end of the use phase, you can do not best guess and just what we did in the last 100 years, throw it away, but assess whether there is value in collecting that material and what way exists to reuse again.
I'm always careful with the word accumulate, because it sounds as if we are creating a data lake with information which we don't do. Therefore, we are accumulating data, but it's only visible for authorized actors about that one mattress. I think that's always important to say, to make sure this is not understood in the wrong way. And also what I think is that the information that I have can then be used to design products in a way that I already know that they're better recyclable afterwards, so that the product information actually goes directly into the design phase. I think is kind of the next step that can happen once we have all this information, right?
That's right. And what I just said, I don't say accumulate information in the sense of I store it somewhere, because that I want to make crystal clear. Catena-X is not a tremendous data lake. Catena-X is a kind of network of networks. We are a kind of a gateway, connect already existing data systems where you pull in. We are just like, as I say, the gateway which gives some indications where to find which kind of information. And that's where our digital twin registry comes into the game.
As you say, digital twin, I have to ask another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
For our listener, what's the difference between the digital twin, the material pass, the product passport, and maybe even the asset administration shell, Adrian?
Okay, let's start with the easy thing. So the material pass is a description of a part essentially its material, I would say, composition. If you have a part, you make out of the part a digital twin as manufactured, and you put over the part like a little pinhole so that you only can see what is material. That's the material path. So in other words, the material path is a child of the digital twin of a part, only reporting on material, full stop. The product path, it can have two different definitions in my world. So if you have a part and you break it down into the subparts, and for each subpart, you have the material passports, and you aggregate the top to the part itself, and it is a product. It could be a gearbox, it could be a high voltage storage, then that aggregated material path would be a product path. The other definition is, and that there I cite the commission, the material path is what we just said, is the technical description of the material disclosure, which is in the part. And if you add now the social dimension, so is the child labor, artist material sourced with respecting the social standards, if there are the recycling KPIs, so how many times part of that product has been run in a cycle, and is there environmental information, for instance, the product footprint or the carbon footprint. If you have those 4 dimensions, according to the commission, then we talk about the product passport.
I see. Interesting. I think the definition is not fully set yet. I would always say that anyone who is selling a product has to bring it on the market with product information and their own product passport. And then the manufacturer who assembles and combines different pre-products is then creating a new product passport for their own value that they bring for their own products. But I think definitions still have to be written. Adrian, maybe we start doing that one day, right? In Wikipedia.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, good.
Now we started to talk about the digital twin. So the digital twin is, so to say, the digital representation of a part. So describing its dimension, its different materials, maybe process information, maybe bill of materials, maybe information about its origin. And then we have the administration asset shell. In my understanding, that's a type or technology in which you can describe or build a digital twin.
I think it's really something that we need to define somewhere, because for me, actually, it's all the same. This is why I asked the question a little bit, because asset administration shell gives information about a product, material passport gives information about a product. Digital twin is the digital, representation of the product. So for me, the 4 terms are kind of very the same thing. But okay, let's just leave it here.
One thing I would like to say still.
Yeah.
So there is a discussion about the digital twin and the product passport. In my book, the product passport is as delivered. So when the car is done, there the data will not change. And the digital twin itself, it will collect information about how it has been used.
During its lifetime.
Exactly. So that's more the behavior twin. And so if you want to know from the product passport how the battery has been performing, you need to have then the link to this behavior twin so that you can access their live data.
Yeah,
just like
also a good view. Yeah, that makes sense. So let's define this so that we all use this in the same way, because we don't. Every expert I speak to uses this in a different way. Good. Where is the product passport in the next 5 years, Adrian? Where are we with the product passport? What do you think?
So I can only speak for Catena-X. For us, it's important that we have the first MVP, and there I have to say it's the IT definition of an MVP. So a system that is hooked up to the back end and in any instance ready to get deployed to a larger amount of people running it. So for us, it's important that we have this MVP based on the Directive 2006/66 with some input from different Catena-X stakeholders, that this is ready by, I would say, September 2022. And we build in parallel a kind of a front end or consumer app where we can at least see for different stakeholders what is in this battery passport. And that's for us, so to say, the learning prototype to get experienced with as we said, the most concrete example currently to establish, populate with information, update and destroy a product passport. And that will be then the ground for the next product passport that we're going to attack. Because as I said, the high voltage storage has a limited amount of materials. And if you now look at, for instance, a gearbox or seatings, I like very much seatings because that's polyurethane foam. That's something similar to the mattresses. It's a closed material system, limited amount of materials, and we know how to recycle it. And there is also value in recycling it. So that's also the two things I always want to cite. It does not make sense to collect all and every materials, because at the end of the day, if you use for the collection, recycling, refinement more energy than if you just take the pristine material, it doesn't make really sense. So there needs to be a kind of a balance, ecological and economical balance, which needs to have at the end of the day like a positive figure, so that you decide to go for a product passport. Because as we said, it is a digital twin, and a digital twin does not just like erect or give birth to it like that. It's a cognitive effort to define all the different entities and all the metadata going with this entity to really fully describe the part, and so to say the data model that goes with that part, which is general enough to have multiple of the similar parts, but we could have slight differences so that you can all represent that with this kind of digital twin. And that's an effort, and that you only spend if there is really value.
Absolutely, I agree. So in 5 years we heard, what do you think in 10 years? Will this be a commodity?
No, we were at the end of 2022. So at end of 2022, we will have the MVP of the battery passport. End of 2023, we will have digital product passport for some of the products that we as BASF holding or selling. I don't want to go into the details there because that's not public information. And I will see in 2024, 2025, passports for clothing or for textiles, because there is also a need to create more transparency. I expect that there will be a passport coming up for electronics. It can be computers and stuff like that. It can also be white goods, so kitchen electronics, laundry machines, stuff like that. So that will come for sure. And then we will see. What we know is that the ESPR, the Eco Design regulation the Eco Designs for Sustainable Product Regulation. That tells us if you have a product containing any kind of substance that impedes recycling or circularity, then that is blamed or recognized as substance of concern. And the next interesting statement is every substance of concern needs a digital product passport. So I already know a couple of products from us that are difficult to recycle and even more difficult to run in a circle. If I think about coatings and paints on cars, because the purpose of coatings and paint is to protect the car and not to get pulled off and recycled. So in my book there, we will issue thousands of digital product passports for our products as soon as the SPR will be implemented as law or as directive and regulation.
Thank you for that insight. And I think this also explains why a company like BASF is engaged in those initiatives. What do you think are the biggest hurdles for the success of the product passport?
I would say as an innovation guy, VUCA, because it's still not yet clear, it's volatile, what exactly for which segments, except for the batteries, are there going to be digital product passports? This uncertainty, what will be in? What do you need to report? Unclear. Complexity. I know just our master data management systems, and that globally is even more complicated. And not only our data we have to collect, we also to go upstreams and ask our suppliers to provide us information that we may not know, and put that into that product passport that needs to come. And also ambiguity. We need to really make sure that the information that we provide is interoperable and also trustworthy, especially if we talk about compliance relevant information. And that is for us the big hurdle. And I'm happy that I work with a rather big corporation because we have the money and the resources to start working on that topic, although it's what I said, not clear, it's uncertain what comes, but we can start to prepare because 2026 is tomorrow.
Yeah.
You want to start after tomorrow to connect your system to a passport issuing body or system, and you don't have any concepts, you may get screwed.
Yeah. I think, thank you, Adrian, for this statement, because it shows that the complexity is large and that 2026 is really around the corner for all the standardization that needs to happen before a product passport can be issued, which, you know, is based on same standards and maybe even same technologies. So I guess we're asking the listener to embrace the Eco-Design Directive and start today and get into the details. Which information do I need to report from my company? In which data systems are they available today or are not available today? And then it's even more difficult. Maybe they're not even standardized. So it's a call to embrace this regulation and to start as soon as possible.
I would even go one step further. I would ask the listeners to reach out to their industry association, to start going for task forces and to reach out to things like Catena-X association, because we are currently building the backend, or reach out to Spherity, they already have this kind of backend. Because start just to do some trials to push information from your ERP, if you don't have an ERP, from your Access database or whatever, where you have product related information, that you start to exercise transferring lots of data and make that data available for a couple of years, because that will be part of the digital product passport. And if you can't do that, search for help, because just wait and see is the most dangerous thing. And the ESPR stated crystal clear, if you are working in a regulated domain in the ESPR, you will be out of business if you cannot provide the digital product passport.
I think we'll leave it there. I think it's a good statement. I think it's we have made a really loud statement about what needs to be done. Thank you so much, Adrian, for this discussion. Thank you for sharing all your insights around Catena-X and the industry. And thank you for making this world a little bit greener.
You're welcome. Let's change the world.